So, Africa now, when you look at the whole area in Africa, and we did this yesterday, you see a lot of different climate zones, okay? So climate zones now are just, oh, yeah, go ahead and move. Different regions that vary greatly between each other, all right? If you look at the United States, you'd have a coastal region in the east, plains in the south, really river valley and farmland, prairie land in this area, into mountains, and then into a coastal plain again, along with deserts in the southwest, stuff like that. Africa is really divided into multiple different areas, all right? The savanna, which is just south of the desert, okay? The big Sahara Desert up top. The steppe, or the dry steppe, which is the area kind of in between those two deserts, farmlands, and jungle. All right, most of the maps yesterday you guys looked at, jungle was, we labeled it rainforest, okay? And it's right along the equator. So you have an equatorial region that's very hot and tropical, all the way to a desert that is virtually impassable. What else? Any questions on that? Make sense? Turner, Jake, Eric, Zach, you guys getting this stuff? Write it down, maybe. That'd be a good idea. Thanks. Hopefully in your maps you've seen, or you're able to label all those things. Okay? Good? Bueller, Mr. Harnden, figure it out. Take this down. All right. What ends up happening in this area, or really on the continent, is all these different climate zones act as huge barriers. People don't cross the desert, so you don't have trade, okay? Which impacts the development of all the regions. One of the reasons why, if you remember back in the early part of the year when we looked at Egypt, why Egypt was so isolated, at least in terms of other parts of Africa, because they simply put couldn't get anywhere. People couldn't get to them. You probably remember the attack-a-lots from the DBQ, right? And why they weren't available to do that. So really, economically, it impacts it. It impacts the availability to trade ideas between each other, and really just to promote goods across the continent. All that. You guys sure you don't want to take this down? Probably should. Even you, Mr. Harnden. All right. Questions? No? All right. Okay. Here's a map now of Africa, and what's really the only thing this is showing? Rivers. Okay? I want you to make sure you put the rivers on that map you got yesterday. And if you look at the importance of water, obviously up here in the north there's nothing. Okay? You're in the desert. But the other thing you need to look at is the rivers aren't really all that well connected. All right? If you compare it, let's say, to North America, where you have the Mississippi and all the tributaries that come off the Mississippi, you can access almost anywhere inland, really from the Rockies to the East Coast, by going up that river and following tributaries. You don't have that here. So rivers aren't they're not the trading mechanism that they are in other parts of the world. They're very isolated. Even the Nile, which starts all the way down here and ends up in the Mediterranean, isn't good because it has tons of waterfalls and things like that on it. All right? So if you're looking at controlling different areas of Africa, you need to control where the water is and where the rivers are, all right, in order to survive. But those rivers don't really act as trading posts between the people of Africa. They act as trading ports and posts between Africans and the rest of the world. Does that make sense? I mean, there's a slight difference there. So if you want to trade with Greece and you're in Egypt, good for you. But if you want to trade with Congo, it's not happening. You've got to cross the desert and move all over. It's just not happening. Okay? All right. The rivers go in each direction. I think most of the time you look at rivers that flow here, they're flowing north-south. Okay? It doesn't happen. The Nile flows south to north. The land is fairly varied. And they're all over the place, but they don't help people move. They don't help them spread ideas. They don't help them spread goods. This river is in South Africa by Mozambique, and it just speaks to one of the reasons why they don't work. It'd be hard to move across without a bridge. Looks like the bridge was built for cars, but I mean, you look at waterfalls and just different geographical features that are there, and they makes it virtually impossible to use it. Besides just that. What's that? Yeah, that's a pretty high bridge. There's going to be hard to flood. Yeah, should be rivers. Apologize for the typo. Yeah. So, yeah. So you put it up. So the importance of rivers now in terms of development is great, but in terms of trade and just the growth of economies isn't. They're isolated. They're hard to navigate. It's hard to get around. Okay. I think we only got a couple more. All right. This should look fairly familiar. What is it? Not climate zones, but you can vegetation. Good job. You read the label. Good, guys. So there are multiple thematic maps that we could look at. When you guys were making your climate map, now you're looking at rainfall and a map similar to this, right? If you want, I can put this up when we're all done. But where do things grow in Africa? Here, right? Kind of in the middle, you're looking at the savanna, the dry steppe, all the way down. You have different spots of desert and other very, very dry lands. So you can see kind of how these barriers form. All right, this is probably just as difficult to pass the rainforest as the desert is. Two totally different, almost contradictory climate areas, but both very, very difficult to pass. So hopefully you understand where the divisions come from and why there's so many barriers. All right, real quick now. Early societies, and this helps us as we look at what happens after they were colonized. They are really nomadic, okay? There's some settle down and become farmers. On the coast, you have a lot of fishermen, a lot of herders, looking at sheep and goats and things like that. They developed this idea of slash and burn agriculture. So what they would do is you clear forest land, set it on fire, okay? All that ash mixes up and makes the ground fertile. And when the crops won't grow there anymore, or after a certain number of years, you rotate and you go to the next plot, okay? Cut the trees down, burn them, grow crops there. When that doesn't work anymore, go to the next spot, okay? So basically, it's their own way of fertilizing the ground. So you farm small plots of land, and you fertilize it using what's there. Across the continent, these societies develop in many different places, and they're very disconnected. So what you have are tribes and regional leaders that are very territorial. That really don't know borders, okay, country borders. They know where their tribal borders are and things like that, but it's not as if what we'd think today, how borders and things like that work. Okay? Good? Yes, no? Probably. All right. Two more. Family patterns now. With the different societies, you have different takes on families. And I think you can see this reflected a little bit in our cultures, but not as much. So you have a basic, a nuclear family. It'd be like kids and their parents. All right? You have extended families or joint families where you have multiple generations living in the same house or same, in very close proximity. So you have grandparents, parents, children, um, really a lineal generational pattern. Um, Sometimes you have extended family in there too, aunts, uncles, cousins, things like that. You have patrilineal family structures, which means the husband's at the head or the male's at the head, and matrilineal family structures where the woman holds the most important role in the family. Um, and really, you look at these two as um, where do you get meaning in your history, in your heritage, and who do you trace it through? So you trace your heritage in the patrilineal society through the father. You trace your heritage in the matrilineal society through the mother. Last one now. Oops, that was the last one. Okay. Here's what I want you guys to do. Grab a book. Read those 5 pages. Okay? 621 to 626 is going to talk a little bit about colonialism and the conflict that we're going to see starting tomorrow. Okay? So 621 to 626, grab a book. If you want to work with somebody, that's fine. Get reading.